Wasn't it great how they blew up that racist murder? That was the first explosive. They put explosive on the dummy or the robot and killed the guy. Thought that was awesome.
Let's talk to Dr. Alex Del Carmen. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, Doc, you heard my partner say that, and I wanted to bring that up as well. What is wrong with if anybody has a problem with this, you're an idiot. Just sending a robot over and blowing the guy up. This guy's a murderer. He's nuts. He's a maniac.
Racist.
Just blow him up.
Yeah, so I think that the bigger question, at least what I've heard throughout the day today, is what kind of police tactics are being used and how they're going to be changing as we deal with more of these radicalized individuals that obviously inflict damage on our police officers and innocent people as well.
And Doctor, I would think that you have to arm these policemen. I mean, with AR-15s, right? I mean, you don't want to be outgunned.
Right. So one of the questions that has been asked for years is, as you know, we went through the 1970s and 80s through this process of community policing, which obviously has had many, many good things associated with it. But in the process of doing that, police departments began to, not use certain colors on their vehicles because they didn't want to look oppressive.
Right.
They also began to engage in certain restraining perspectives of, for instance, having access to an AR but having to unlock their vehicles in order for them to do that. And so what we are finding now is that the bad guys are armed to the teeth and they're carrying explosives. Some of them are actually strapped with explosives on them, and our police officers are still having to rely on a Glock or some sort of a small caliber weapon to fight these individuals that are basically snapping bullets left and right.
Yeah, we're talking to Dr. Alex Del Carmen. So Doc, because I thought about this, and to Tracy's point, we've both been to Europe, and Doc, I don't know if you've been over there or not. You go into because they're talking about having cops at airport being, carrying more weaponry. You know as well as I do. You walk through an airport in anywhere in Europe,
to the teeth.
Those guys are carrying. I mean, they got Uzis. They're not screwing around. They're ready to rock and roll. Now, I'm sorry that we have come to that point in this country, but we're going to have to get used to it. This is the new normal, Doc. Would you not agree with that?
So first of all, to answer your question, I've been to Europe many times, and in fact, I travel there frequently. But I will tell you that I will not even use Europe as an example. Let's go to Israel. If you look at the Israelis and how they do business, I mean, clearly the Israelis have it down to to a science. They absolutely, you cannot go into a mall in Israel unless you're going to be patted down and go through a metal detector, and people are going to be carrying high caliber weapons. I think your points are fair points, and I tell you, at the end of the day, it's a question that the American people have to ask themselves, which is, where do we want our society to be and how protected do we want to be? That's a question that we ask ourselves every time a tragedy happens, but we really need to do some soul-searching here and figure out what the answer is going to be.
Let me ask you to hang on for 30 seconds, if you would, Doc. We're talking to Dr. Alex Del Carmen. Addie and Tracy, our guest, Dr. Alex Del Carmen. And, Doc, let me ask you this. We're talking about you train police officers. Explain to us exactly, here briefly, what exactly it is you do.
So most of the training that I perform police officers has to do with racial profiling and bias-based policing, but I also have trained police officers at police academies before related to use of force, crime prevention, and different other components of their police work. So I pretty much have done a little bit of everything in the context of police training.
Doc, I tell you what I'm really liking, and a lot of police departments are doing it, is the two-man teams. I like that. For the safety of the police officer, I'm all for that. Are you?
It's interesting you asked that. A little-known fact about my research is that I've actually been, I think I'm probably either the only one or one of the few criminologists in the U.S. that actually did studies on two officers versus one officer vehicles. And one of the things that we found in our study, which was done about 12 years ago, is that most police officers actually hate it. They hate to be with somebody else in the police car. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It really has to do a lot with how much money a city is willing to.
It's all about cost, Doc. I mean, because it makes too much sense to have the two people together. I mean, obviously, it's going to be about money.
Right.
Doc, and I'll tell you what, another good idea. I love the two-man team. Let me just say that my brother's a cop, my brother-in-law's a cop, so I come from a family of cops. But what they did, and being from Los Angeles, the two-man teams, and what they did a lot, the L.A. sheriffs, is they teamed up a black guy and a white guy. And that sometimes can diffuse the situation, if you know what I mean, right?
Well, I mean, that's a nice concept, but I mean, at the end of the day, police officers are viewed as police officers belonging to one particular code, the one particular unit. And so whether you're a black cop or a Hispanic cop or a Caucasian cop, at the end of the day, you're a cop. And so minority communities will look at a police officer regardless of their race or ethnicity and still see a police officer.
But see, that's not that wasn't really the case in Dallas, right? Because he was trying to kill white police officers.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the fact that, well, yeah, but he ended up killing a Hispanic officer, so that shows you his accuracy, right?
So Doc, let me ask you this, and you've obviously dug deep into this. Is there, the perception is that it's getting worse and worse as far as some groups' perception of the police. Is it indeed getting worse, or is it the same as it ever was, or is it indeed getting worse? Let's put it that way, very simply.
So it appears to be that people are beginning to have, or are having rather, emotional responses to a lot of the video that has been produced in the past.
So social media, you know what? Let me back that up. I was going to say social media, is that going to exacerbate the situation is what we're looking at.
Absolutely. And it absolutely has already, and it will continue to do so.
And Doc, the police officers, they've got to love those body cameras. I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, right? I mean, they're all for that, yes?
Right. So the body cams have actually helped out a great deal of officers, particularly the individuals that filed a lawsuit or a complaint against an officer, which is absolutely false, and the video tells a different story. So in that sense, it's great. But keep in mind that body cams only show a particular angle or perspective of the officer's view, so they can never truly represent reality.
But you know what? That's a great point, because I did see there was a video on Facebook, and a cop had pulled over a young woman about 2:30 in the morning. It turns out she was a stripper. I have nothing against stripper. I actually think strippers are pretty decent people.
Backbone of this country.
Absolutely. But she tried to bribe the police officer and just get, with money. And his comment was, finally took her to, she claimed police brutality and all this stuff. And the police officer on camera says, "Thank God I have these body cams." I mean, it really, I think it helps the police officer tremendously.
Yeah, there's no question. And once again, I think it's a great tool for law enforcement. The only thing to keep in mind when we review the body cam video is that, it doesn't always put it in context. It doesn't always tell the story. And what I mean by that is it's different to be sitting down on a Monday morning or a Monday afternoon at home with your computer on watching a video, but it's different to be at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday afternoon in a predominantly, scary situation for that police officer to have his gun drawn against the suspect. So it's very different.
But you know what, and we're talking to Dr. Alex Del Carmen, but Doc, we've talked about this on the show before too, is that if I'm a cop, I'm agreeing with Tracy here. If I'm a cop, I'd love to have that camera, because unless you're up to no good, 99.9% of the time, it has your back.
Yeah, absolutely. It has your back, and it has your perspective. And think about the officers that have both the dash cam video as well as the body cam video. So they have the dual perspective of having the dash cam of their vehicle capturing, the bigger scope of what's going on, and then the body cam capturing the interaction with that particular person. It is your best friend. There's no question.
What's happening around the country, whether we're talking about Ferguson or Dallas, what kind of effect, because you talk to these guys, does it have on the cops? And I've made this, I refer to the phrase, slow playing it on a call, or maybe they're just a little slow to react, or, this guy's doing something, it's not a big deal. Do you find cops doing that, not really hustling or going after a scene, maybe just kind of slow playing it because of what's happening? They're probably thinking, what the hell's in it for me?
Well, it has had a different type of effect on different type of police officers. Some of them, and the FBI director said it best a few weeks ago, he called it the Ferguson effect. A lot of police officers, are basically feeling the scope the pressure that they're under, the fact that they're being videotaped and audio recorded on everything, so they're proceeding with caution when they interact with somebody. And then others are simply still doing what they do best, or perhaps not so best. So I think it has some effect. I don't know to what extent we know what type of effect it's had up to now.
And we get to that effect you're talking about, Doc, the social media effect, afraid that you're going to end up in some wacky video that's going to completely destroy your life, because these guys have to act on instinct.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if you hesitate for a molecule, that could be life or death. And
it's real easy Monday morning quarterback.
Correct. I hate it for those guys that has to happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it instinct. I would say training. And training has to be such core of what they do that it becomes an instinct. In other words, when the situation comes up to them, they have to revert back to training in such a way that the training comes first before the brain even processes that the training kicked in. That's where we want officers to be.
Chief, Doctor, I love Chief Brown there, the Dallas Police. Man, loving this guy. I think the answer is more explosives with the robot. What do you think of that?
Well, it certainly is a very different way of doing business. But I tell you, we here in Texas, for the most part, have looked at that way of dealing with bad guys, and I don't think many people here have any problems with that, to be honest.
No, who would?
And that's the first time this has actually been used, right, the explosives with the robot, right? They've never done this before.
Yeah, so domestically within the United States borders, yes, but it has been used by military.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Doc, so let me ask you this, and I was curious about this, and we don't have to get too graphic, but what exactly, if you know, can you tell us what exactly happened?
It was a pound of explosives.
So they
to the robot.
But I'm saying they just pulled it up next to the guy and blow it up. I don't know.
So make my day.
Right, so they put a portion of C4, which is a military-level explosive, on the actual robot, and the robot basically was driven up to the bad guy and blew him up. I mean, that's essentially what happened, and that's what Chief Brown has said publicly, and that's what we know up to now. So
no, I just have this.
This
is
is great.
Bringing up. I'm just thinking about this guy, the bad guy, sitting there going,
what is this?
What's this?
Yeah.
Boom!
And then the Chief's only comment was he was all for it. He says, just don't blow up the building.
Right. Don't hurt anything, but kill that dude.
Yeah.
And with that, Doctor, we appreciate you talking to us. Would you come back and visit us again sometime? This was fun.
Happy to do it.
Thanks, Doc.
Dr. Alex Del Carmen. I want to say fun, but that's interesting.